Hey there. It's me, Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the comment, thanks. Sunday, July 13th. I had hoped to take Sarah to church today, as part of my efforts to get her out more. But between the busy day yesterday and the wearing effects of chemotherapy, she spent the morning in bed. I didn't feel like going by myself, so I went down and read the Sunday paper in the living room, and went back to help the weekend cook. I hadn't bothered to put my wig or scarf on, but I was wearing the Westland shirt that Julie gave me yesterday, white shorts, and short lime green socks. Since so many of the kids didn't spend weekends at Hope Haven, meals were light. They still took some careful planning because of the different dietary needs. It's kind of lonely around here without Billy, I remarked. Yes, it is, she said. I liked his mom, too. She has had so much to deal with through the years. Did you know her husband left several years ago? He couldn't take it. Chronic severe illnesses like that really take a toll. Oh, did you hear about Roberta? No, what? I asked. I had assumed that she was home for the weekend. She's back in intensive care. They're very concerned. I was shocked. Sarah and I had been working on another set of silly earrings for her, and we assumed that we'd be able to give them to her tonight. That poor kid. I wanted to go see her, but the cook said that they allowed immediate family only. I might want to go and spend some time in the ICU visitors lounge with her mom, though. We have some new kids scheduled to come in this afternoon, by the way. A little boy with a blood disease, and a teenage girl, 14, I think, with childhood leukemia. Later that afternoon, the girl and her mother did come in. Sarah was downstairs by then, and we had just commented on how we had gone from being the new kids at Hope Haven to being the old hands. We talked about ways that we could be helpful and friendly to the newcomers, like Kelly and Billy had been for us. Neither of us had any head covering on, and weren't even thinking about it, when the newcomers arrived. We went to greet them. The girl, Wendy, had long, dark hair. We introduced ourselves, and both mother and daughter looked stricken. The girl began to cry. We realized why. She was seeing us as her future, and she was right. We apologized, and went upstairs. We were both stressed as we sat in our room. Sarah told me that she had heard parts of my conversation with Julie yesterday, and asked if I was sure that what we were doing was okay. Yes, I said, then I burst out bawling. Sarah cried, too, and we hugged. I couldn't stop crying, and the male voice in the back of my head was scolding me for it. Sarah Beth, I keep worrying about what Julie said, about creating some kind of monster. Sometimes I worry that I won't be able to get Mark back when all this is done. What if this changes me into some kind of sissy or something? Would you still love and respect me? I mean, I don't think that will happen, but I worry about it. Poor Annie, Sarah Beth said as she hugged me. I know this is confusing to you, and hard for you. But it'll be okay. You'll get Mark back again, I'm sure. A nurse's aide poked her head in the door to see if everything was all right. It's all right, Sarah smiled. Annie's just worried that she hasn't heard from her boyfriend Mark lately. Then she whispered to the aide, a little PMS, too. I couldn't help but giggle, but then I cried some more. The aide left. You've given up so much to be here for me, Annie. She whispered to me, you can't be Mark just now, since the walls seem to have ears. Then louder she said, you are the kindest, gentlest person I know, and you've been strong for me. I can be strong for you, too. I realized that as tough a time as I was having being someone else, that Sarah Beth was facing a whole life of not being who she used to be, the sweet, shy, happy girl who always blended in, who didn't worry about cancer coming back, whose body was lithe and graceful. Yes, we could keep on being strong for each other. We talked a little longer. Annie, she asked. Is there anybody else you could talk to about this? I'm glad to hear you out, don't get me wrong. But I'm concerned that you are dealing with some feelings you may not want to talk about to me, or even think about to yourself. It might help. Who? I asked. It would be a relief to talk with someone, but if we give away our secret, we'll all be in trouble, and I can't stay with you any longer. Maybe a counselor, or a minister, Sarah thought. They're supposed to keep things confidential, aren't they? Maybe Reverend McGrail at the Presbyterian Church here. She seems like the type who would listen without judging. I agreed to think it over. I really did need to be able to spill my guts to someone, and it was unfair to Sarah that I keep dumping on her. Finally, we made our way downstairs, hair in place, and tried to reassure Wendy and her mother. What about this top and these shorts? Do they work together? I asked Sarah this morning. Oh, Annie, no. Don't you see that those two blues don't work at all together? They don't exactly clash, but they don't look good either. Why don't you wear white shorts? Sarah asked. I wore white shorts yesterday, I responded. When I lived as a boy, picking clothes was much easier. And we didn't get time over the weekend to wash the dark load with my jeans and jean shorts. I know. It's cooler today. Try Miss Kansas. I groaned. Miss Kansas was the nickname we gave to another contribution from Aunt Claire. It was a nicely cut knit dress, ankle length, long sleeves, and high collar. But the problem was the pattern. On a blue background, the dress was covered with big, bright sunflowers. Not exactly the height of teen sophistication, I muttered as I took it off the hanger and slipped it on. Annie, you're not exactly a sophisticated teen, and that's one of the things I love about you. That dress fits your comfortable, cozy personality to a T, Sarah smiled. I'd rather be wearing a tee and jeans, but I promised to wear everything once, I grudgingly agreed. It's a little awkward to work in PT like this, but it'll be okay, I guess. Actually, it was very comfortable, and I had to agree that I looked nice in it. In Wichita, I would look even nicer. Sarah and I took a side trip after PT. We went up to the ICU visiting room and saw Roberta's mother. She hugged us both tightly. How is Roberta? I asked. You know what they say? As well as can be expected? Her condition is critical, but there's a good chance that she will pull through. She has every other time. It's just that, her voice caught every time she gets a little weaker. I'm not sure if this is good news or bad news, but the doctors said that they are putting her name on the heart transplant list now. She'll be a long ways from the top of the list, but it will come sooner than we had thought. It'll have to come, I'm afraid, or her little heart will just wear out. It was really hard to think about that cute little girl needing to have her heart replaced if she was ever going to grow up to be a teenager. We talked a little longer and gave Roberta's mother the new set of earrings we had made. She just loves the others you made, she said, thanking us. She was angry when they wouldn't let her bring them with her over here. But I have an idea. I'll check and see if I can hook them onto something in her room, where she can see them. Roberta would love that. She hugged us again. She gave birth to Roberta when she was still a teenager, she had told us earlier, so she wasn't that many years older than we were. That made her lonely at Hope House. She was too old to be one of the kids, fitting in like me, and too young to be comfortable with some of the other parents. I'm glad we could be her friend. Before we left, I asked if she would let us know when it came time for Roberta to get a new heart, so we could be there for them. She smiled and said that she couldn't promise anything, because when it happened it would happen quickly, but she would try. On the way back, Sarah Beth looked at me quizzically. Do you realize that you offered for us to come see her, Sarah and Annie? They don't know your mark. I hadn't thought about that. Oh, well. We can sort that out later, I guess. Maybe Annie can be tied up at college, and Mark can bring you. Or something. Or something, Sarah said, shaking her head. After chemo, I saw a note with my name on it on the bulletin board. Mrs. Verdugo, the administrator, wanted to see me. A sense of dread came over me, like with a summons to go to the principal's office. I took Sarah up to the room and whispered, she couldn't have found out, could she? Mrs. Verdugo is petite, always professionally dressed, and has a no-nonsense look about her. She would make a good school principal. She smiled when I knocked on her open door and stepped inside. Good sign. Annie, do come in. I love that dress, by the way. It really fits you. Practical, down-to-earth, warm, friendly, kind of old-fashioned, but in a very nice way. I smiled and thanked her. I am never afraid to admit when I'm wrong, she said, and I was wrong about you. Dangerous words, but her smile seemed genuine. I smiled back, still a little nervous. I was strongly tempted not to admit you and Sarah Beth to Hope Haven. You are just the minimum age to be a healing partner, and I wasn't sure that you could handle life here. I thought you might have become irresponsible and rowdy, or that you could have ended up as an emotional basket case, not being able to handle the situations that we face here. It was only because your sister seemed so vulnerable that we allowed it. Well, like I said, I was mistaken. You are mature, helpful, and a real asset, not to just your sister but to everybody here. That haircutting party was a bit over the top, she smiled, but Billy Yates would vote for you for president right now because of it. You and Sarah have made such a difference for Billy and for Kelly Cassidy, too. She had always been a hard case, sullen and unresponsive, until you two adopted her. Oh, well. Maybe the time was just right. I made a mental note to try and call Kelly, just to see how she was getting along. Anyway, Annie, you seem to have become my unofficial morale officer around here. Keep up the good work, she invited. We have a young man coming in tomorrow or Wednesday, by the way. He's had surgery for a brain tumor and isn't in very good shape. Take him under your wing, would you? Sure, I agreed. Sarah let out a big sigh of relief when I came back up smiling, and told her what a sweet, friendly, helpful, old-fashioned girl I was. I knew it all along, she grinned. I lost a nail today, my second since I've been here. I'd hoped they would stay intact for the full 6 weeks. Oh, well. It was rainy from the get-go today, scattered thundershowers with just plain showers in between. They run a shuttle from Hope Haven to the Children's Hospital which we usually ignore. Today we just missed it. I was wearing jeans and the printed top I wanted to wear yesterday. So we went back to our room, parked our hair and put on scarves, stuffed a dry set of clothes in a small duffel, and I rolled her across the street through the downpour. I had wrapped plastic around Sarah's leg and across her lap. We had also stuck our swim gear and a hairdryer in the bag, not for its conventional use, obviously. Even Sarah's brows and lashes were thinning out rather badly by this time. When we arrived at PT, we went swimming, so any dampness around the cushion part of Sarah's prosthesis would have time to dry out. Then a change of clothes, followed by working together on some exercise equipment, still with her leg stashed in a corner. I helped Sarah onto the exercise bike, to show her she could cycle with one leg, as well as to work on her hip muscles. I had fashioned a Velcro strap to help keep her foot on the pedal during the upswing. Later, I figured, we could try the same thing with the prosthesis. We took a break about 10. Kevin sat down with us, and we sipped Cokes. I have a question, she asked Kevin. I have to use the walker all the time when I walk now. And it feels like I walk for miles every day, but I know that compared to what I used to do, I'm not walking far at all. Will I need the walker this fall, when I start back to high school? Or will I have to spend most of my time in the chair? What can I expect? Kevin explained to her that since she was young, strong, and most important, stubborn, she was doing quite well with her therapy. Assuming you stay in good health, and don't have any setbacks, you should be ready to walk when you go back to school. I would recommend that you use a cane, and you'll be working with that before you leave here. But with all the jostling you receive, a cane will help you keep your balance, and preserve your strength. There will be some days when you're tired or not feeling good that the walker will be your best friend, and other days you will need the chair. The walker? I was hoping nobody back home would see it. It makes me feel like a little old lady in a nursing home. Sarah said. Maybe we could jazz it up a little bit, I pondered. We'll talk to Mark about it. He may have some ideas to make that walker look downright trendy. Kevin went on to explain that it would take Sarah anywhere from 6 to 18 months to achieve her full potential with the prosthesis. Sarah frowned a bit when he said that her gait would never be quite like it was before, but he quickly explained that it wouldn't be nearly as noticeable as she thought it would. Tuesday, July 14th. It was rainy from the get-go today, scattered thundershowers with just plain showers in between. They run a shuttle from Hope Haven to the Children's Hospital, which we usually ignore. Today we just missed it. I was wearing jeans and the printed top I wanted to wear yesterday. So we went back to our room, parked our hair and put on scarves, stuffed a dry set of clothes in a small duffel, and I rolled her across the street through the downpour. I had wrapped plastic around Sarah's leg and across her lap. We had also stuck our swim gear and a hairdryer in the bag, not for its conventional use. Obviously, even Sarah's brows and lashes were thinning out rather badly by this time. When we arrived at PT, we went swimming, so any dampness around the cushion part of Sarah's prosthesis would have time to dry out. Then a change of clothes, followed by working together on some exercise equipment, still with her legs stashed in a corner. I helped Sarah onto the exercise bike, to show her she could cycle with one leg, as well as to work on her hip muscles. I had fashioned a Velcro strap to help keep her foot on the pedal during the upswing. Later, I figured, we could try the same thing with the prosthesis. We took a break about 10. Kevin sat down with us, and we sipped Cokes. I have a question, she asked Kevin. I have to use the walker all the time when I walk now. And it feels like I walk for miles every day, but I know that compared to what I used to do, I'm not walking far at all. Will I need the walker this fall, when I start back to high school? Or will I have to spend most of my time in the chair? What can I expect? Kevin explained to her that since she was young, strong, and most important, stubborn, she was doing quite well with her therapy. Assuming you stay in good health, and don't have any setbacks, you should be ready to walk when you go back to school. I would recommend that you use a cane, and you'll be working with that before you leave here. But with all the jostling you receive, a cane will help you keep your balance, and preserve your strength. There will be some days when you're tired or not feeling good that the walker will be your best friend, and other days you will need the chair. The walker? I was hoping nobody back home would see it. It makes me feel like a little old lady in a nursing home. Sarah said. Maybe we could jazz it up a little bit, I pondered. We'll talk to Mark about it. He may have some ideas to make that walker look downright trendy. Kevin went on to explain that it would take Sarah anywhere from 6 to 18 months to achieve her full potential with the prosthesis. Sarah frowned a bit when he said that her gait would never be quite like it was before, but he quickly explained that it wouldn't be nearly as noticeable as she thought it would. Wednesday, July 15th. Lost nail number 3 sometime during the night, and couldn't find it in the bedding this morning. I've been painting the uncovered nails blue, but they are noticeable. I can't say they stick out like a sore thumb, because they don't stick out. It's the other ones that do. Sarah Beth was really surprised. The acrylics are very long-lasting. She wondered if Joan Kim attached them less tightly, to make it easier on me to remove them later. Sarah Beth and I worked out together on some of the exercise machines in PT today. One of the things I haven't mentioned is that in addition to learning how to walk in a new way, she's also building up her arm and upper body strength, so when she uses crutches or the wheelchair, she'll have more endurance. I told her that I needed to work out with her just to make sure that she wouldn't end up being able to beat me at arm wrestling. We had an official conference today with Kevin, Mrs. Berdugo, and Sarah's oncologist, sort of a halfway mark evaluation. Everything looked good. I called Reverend McGrail for an appointment. I'll see her tomorrow. The new kid came today. He was in the living room when we got back from chemo. His mother, a well-dressed lady, was with him. "Hi, I'm Roger," he grinned as he greeted us. "Hi, I'm Julie Holding, but everybody here calls me Annie, because my sister Sarah does." "Nice to meet you, Roger." Sarah said hi too. Roger's a big guy that you could tell used to be bigger. He uses a wheelchair, not because he's paralyzed, he explained, but because the tumor that was just operated on destroyed the hearing in one ear, and totally messed up his balance. He was wearing expensive-looking but well-worn cowboy boots, faded jeans, and a nice denim shirt. His head was shaved, and some still angry-looking scars traced a box on his skull, showing where they had operated. Brain cancer, I had heard. He was only 15. "What's your last name, Roger?" Sarah asked. "Cameron." "Where are you from, Roger Cameron?" I asked. "Cameron." I thought that his hearing problem had caused him to misunderstand my question, so I repeated it more clearly. "No, I heard," he said. "I'm Roger Cameron and I'm from Cameron." "Wow. The whole town's named after you?" Sarah asked. "No. It was named before me. But it was named after my great-great-grandfather." Roger talked even more slowly and with more of a Western drawl than I did in my Julie role, so it took a while to converse. But you could tell that in spite of being a shy kid, he was really enjoying talking with, he thought, 2 teen girls who weren't turned off by his condition. That's one neat thing about Hope Haven. You have to learn to accept people as they are. His mother stayed in the background, but you could tell that she was happy that her son was finding new friends. He had just come over from inpatient status at the Children's Hospital and would be here for several weeks to go over for chemotherapy and physical therapy, a program similar to Sarah Beth's. His chemo would be with heavier doses, though, since the surgery wasn't completely successful. Parts of the cancer had wrapped itself around critical areas, so they couldn't remove it all without destroying vital parts of his brain. The chemo, and later, radiation therapy, could slow or stop the cancer, at least for a while, but the odds weren't good. I was amazed at how open both he and his mother were about the seriousness of his situation. The kid was dying, he knew it, and he was dealing with it. I volunteered to help him in PT. I had some pretty good ideas about what Kevin would want to try to keep his muscles from atrophying. Thursday, July 16th. The prosthetics people were fussing around Sarah Beth today, making adjustments and measurements for the more realistic-looking leg that would replace the mechanical-looking one. Kevin and I spent time with Roger, working up some routines to work with him on. Roger was still so weak from his ordeal was passive exercises, us or machines moving his limbs for him. I asked if water therapy was a possibility. It was, Kevin explained, but they would have to be very careful to compensate for Roger's lack of balance. With the proper flotation devices and an assistant on each side, one of the staff people on one side and me on the other, we could do it, starting next week. As the machine moved Roger's arm, I sat by him and we talked. I didn't know rich kids could be shy and sweet, but Roger was. A lot of kids thought he was stuck up, he told me, and he didn't have many friends. He had wanted to ask a girl that he thought was real pretty to a dance last fall, but he didn't. A tear rolled down his cheek and he said, that was probably my last chance to ever go on a date, and I blew it. I've never even been kissed by a girl, except for Mom, of course, and some obnoxious aunts. I smiled and shook my head. Roger, it would ruin my professional status as an official PT volunteer to plant a big smacker on a client. And besides, I don't kiss on first dates. His eyes grew wide. Oh, no. I wasn't hinting or asking, I'm sorry. I patted the shoulder of the arm that wasn't being cranked up and down by the machine. It's okay, Roger. I knew you didn't mean anything by it. I shouldn't have teased you. I can see your circulation is all better, though. Your face is all red. You're a sweet kid, Roger. We continued to talk. I told him about life in Fort Russell, adapting my own stories into a female context, and throwing in some of Julie's basketball experiences. I told him about my boyfriend. To all the people we talked to, Sarah Beth and I both had boyfriends, and both of them were named Mark, but with different last names, of course. He told me that up until a few months ago, he spent all his spare time on the ranch, working hard in the outdoors and loving the wide-open prairie. After lunch, I changed into the blue floral print skirt and the blouse that went with it, one of the outfits that Mom had brought for me the day after my big makeover. It was attractive but conservative, the kind of thing a girl would wear to go on a job interview, or to talk to a pastor. Sarah Beth was tired and feeling the effects of the chemo, so she stayed in the room and rested. I wasn't sure what I was getting into when I drove to the Presbyterian church near the campus to talk with Reverend McGrail. In a way, I was glad she was a woman minister. It seemed a little less threatening somehow to tell a woman about my situation than telling a man. When I first introduced myself as Annie, she remembered that we had visited the church before with our parents. Oh, yes. I remember how delighted I was that you all chose to worship with us. You looked like such a nice family. Then I was disappointed when the guest register showed you lived out of town. Now that I know you and your sister are at Hope Haven, I'll be glad to come by and visit. It really got her attention when I swore her to secrecy, confidentiality, she called it, and told her I was not only Annie, I was Mark. She explained later that at first she thought I might have a multiple personality disorder, then gender dysphoria, being miserable and feeling out of place in the gender one's born into. I had the feeling that she could handle either situation without losing her cool, and soon began comfortable talking with this tiny woman with half glasses and short gray hair. She mostly listened, which is what I mostly needed, just to have somebody to talk to. When she did talk, she gave me a lot to think about. It helped me surface and be able to name a lot of feelings I had stirring around. Here are some comments I want to remember. The tension you live under must be terrific. You've talked about the tension of being discovered, the tension of having to misrepresent who you are and to lie to cover up who you are, when you are clearly not a dishonest person. Then there's the sexual tension of being Sarah's boyfriend while trying to be her sister. You are so utterly believable as Annie, in all the little things. I once knew a man who wanted to be a woman, and he even got to the point of living as one full time, but you are more believable than he was. I think it's because he wanted to be the sexy, glamorous woman that he fantasized about, and you're just a nice, ordinary, pleasant girl. You've come to like Annie quite a lot, haven't you? I know that you are doing all this for your love of Sarah, but I'd say that Annie has become another girl in your life. When you answer questions or supply information to others about Annie, you say that you answer for Julie when it comes to questions about your past, but you answer for Annie, with a little bit of Mark mixed in, when it comes to how you're feeling or what you want to do now. Interesting. In a way, you don't see yourself as being dishonest, because you are so deep into your Annie role that you really see yourself as her. I'm concerned about your transition back to Mark. I know that you want to live as Mark again, but I don't think that you can just switch Annie off like you'd turn off a light. I'm not suggesting that you wear dresses, or anything, but you've changed your whole emotional frame of reference, and you can't deny to your inner self that that has happened. I suspect that there's a lot about Annie that you would do well to accept and incorporate into Mark. No, I don't mean the obvious things, like wardrobe or feminine mannerisms, that could get you in a lot of trouble. But Annie has some wonderful qualities that I'm sure were there in Mark, but maybe not as near the surface. We agreed to see each other again, and that it would help to have at least one three-way session, with Sarah Beth joining us. It was a big relief to me to have permission from an objective outsider that it was okay for me to like being Annie, that this wasn't somehow betraying or endangering Mark. I got back in time to take Sarah on a walk before supper, so we could talk freely about what I'd discovered. Sarah looked back from her wheelchair at me, and said, "I'm glad you like Annie, Mark." I never realized either how she'd take on this much of a life of her own. When we're back together at home as Mark and Sarah, I'll really be happy. But it makes me feel good to know that Annie will always be a part of you, too. I couldn't help but kiss her. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access. Link in the comment, thanks.